The winter weather has been keeping me indoors, so I finally got back to editing this plein air session I did back in May on Huckleberry Creek. I hope you enjoy it. If you'd like to use an image from my video as a reference for a painting, go right ahead. Please just tag me if you do share the painting online. I'd love to see your work.
Gray clouds and nightmares and twinkling snow. Hell no, I'm not coming back. Hell no, I'm not coming back.
Hey, hello again. Well, I'm out on one of my favorite trails, Huckleberry Creek, near Mount Rainier. It was just too nice and sunny today to stay in the studio, so I decided to get out and get a hike and hopefully get a little painting in. It's a little early yet. There's still some snow on the trail, and it is chilly here in the trees, so I'm gonna have to try to find a place that maybe will get some sun. I didn't bring enough layers, I don't think, as chilly as it is. So it's sunny and crystal clear day. The river is, the little Huckleberry Creek is full of water, lots of rapids. So I'm just walking along looking for a nice wide place to set up and do a quick oil painting.
It's early spring, so the bears are waking up. I've got my bear bells in my backpack if I need them, but there's quite a few people up here, so I'm not too worried about it. Once I get set up, I'll keep making some noise just to make sure I don't scare a bear that isn't expecting a human up here. Alright, here's the scene I'm going to paint. I hope you can hear me over the roar of the creek. It's really full and lovely. I like the way the creek is coming at me out of the shadow. There's even a little bit of sunlight in the far distance. I'm not quite sure I want to capture that yet. I'll play with the composition a little bit here. But I do like how it's coming out of the shadow by that large moss-covered tree, which is picking up a little bit of light. And then how the light is hitting the rapids here in the foreground. I'll kind of zero, I think I'll crop in on something about like that. Put the focus on that line of rocks and the water falling over it. That's really pretty. I think it's going to be really interesting seeing how the light highlights that through the day. And I'll try to pick the most interesting lighting pattern as I'm standing here. I'm facing west, so the sun is going to travel that direction. It's going to be kind of in my eyes later in the day, so that might be a problem. So I'll try to move kind of quickly. I've got some trees, big trees all around me, so I think I'll be able to stay in the shade. Quick rundown on my palette. I'm using the Joshua Bean Day Tripper. Got some Artist Turpentine here, a little liquid in that cup there. Got some Winsor & Newton underpainting white, which is a titanium white with a little bit of liquid type alkyd included, so it dries faster. Nice for plein air. Ivory black, cold gray, that underpainting white, cerulean blue, cobalt blue. I've got a little bit of phthalo blue here just in case I need it to pick up some really vibrant colors in the water when the sun hits it. Ultramarine blue, sap green, transparent oxide brown, burnt sienna, alizarin crimson, cad red, cad yellow, radiant lemon by Gamblin, and yellow ochre. So I've got a bunch of colors out. I'm not sure I need all of them. I've got Artist Turpentine in this can, so I'll start out with a turpentine wash. I'm using this little GoPro to film my main mixing palette, and then I transfer the colors to this suspended palette. Using this little palette This additional palette gives me extra room to mix on, and it also puts the paint on the same plane as the panel, which I like. It helps me to judge color. I hope this little GoPro helps you out. I hope it gives you a little more information. Please let me know in the comments. It's a little extra trouble to set it up and to do the editing, of course, to include it, so I'd like to know if it's worth the trouble. Lots of greens in the scene, which I love, but there's also a lot of cad yellow, a lot of orange and warm browns. So I think for the scene today, for the underpainting, I'm just thinking about the final colors and what would be a nice complement shining through. I like to put the brush strokes down kind of thin if I can on the final layer, so that the underpainting shows through. So the river is all kinds of shades of green and blue and warm burnt siennas in the foreground. So I think in general I'm gonna, where the river's in the shade in the distance, I'll go alizarin crimson, and where it's more in the sun here in the foreground, I'll go burnt sienna. That way I can use that underpainting to hint at the rocks that are getting some sunlight in the river, and I can use the alizarin crimson in the background to give me that cool shade without being a blue, without being that cool. And then for most of the surrounding area, I'll use burnt sienna or cad yellow, and I'll just kind of use different colors there as they come out to me. I'll kind of play with the wash as I'm going and try to make an interesting abstract pattern. And I'll also use those different colors in the turpentine wash to kind of finalize the composition. I'll start with a big soft bristle brush just to scrub in the colors. I'm using an 11 by 14 inch Gorilla Painter oil primed linen panel today. Alright, there's the turpentine wash in. You can see I took my time playing with the composition, deciding on where I wanted the highlights and where I wanted the dark darks. So I arrived at kind of a band of dark across the top and one little pool of high value in the very far background. I want this tree here to jump forward, and I want the highest contrast to be right in this middle lower third. As you can see, the light on the scene is changing a lot, so I need to remember that light pattern that I saw when I first got here and try to capture that. So I want to move quickly now and grab the colors before they change too much. As the sun moves across the scene, the afternoon light's going to be shining more at me, so it's going to change the harmony, the lighting a lot. So I'll move pretty quickly on this. I'll also refer to my reference photo if I need to check that value pattern that I liked in the beginning. And I also will try to stay close to the value pattern that I have now established in the turpentine wash. So this is kind of the beauty of the turpentine wash. It lets you play with the composition in a dynamic way. It lets some kind of happy accidents happen sometimes. As the turpentine moves the paint around, you get almost watercolor-like washes where some different things can happen and develop. And if you want to move something, you can just loosen it up again with a little bit of turpentine and move it around. And then hopefully some of that underpainting can shine through the finished painting, giving it a real energy that I love. So now I'll start to mix up the colors. I'll start with the far background. right, the sun swung around a lot sooner than I was expecting, but that's okay. I'm definitely going to stay warm. Got some colors mixed up now. I've got some lavender and some blue for the shadow, and I matched the value to the value I put down earlier. I've got some blues and browns, really dull, grayed out blue and brown for the forest in the background in the shadow, and then some higher value yellows and yellow reds. I mixed a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of cad yellow, a little bit of alizarin crimson to get this, and then a lot of white and a lot of that cold gray to get this really dull kind of a peach, gray yellow, and a little higher value gray yellow. So now I'll take a relatively big soft brush and just lay in an abstract way the pattern that I'm seeing in the background. I'm going to keep things very abstract in the background. By no means do I want to paint. I do not want to paint every tree, every branch, every leaf. I want to suggest it. Same thing with the river coming forward. I'm not going to paint every rock and every rapid. I find painting that way to be way too time consuming for plein air, and it's also for me kind of boring to look at when it's finished. When everything is done with a tiny brush and everything is detailed out to the last leaf and rock, there's nothing there for me to really, I don't know, apply my imagination to. It seems like if you add a pretty heavy amount of abstract value to your realistic painting, it becomes much more interesting. So that's what I'm after. I'm after a definite sense of realism so that the scene is immediately recognizable and beautiful. It draws you in, but also enough abstraction that you can kind of look at it and say, what is that in the background? Is it a fallen log? Is it a deer? You know, you can kind of apply some imagination to it. And as I paint that way, if I go a little more abstract, a little less realistic, that can also bring about some happy accidents. Some neat things can happen if you're using a large brush and a palette knife to apply some thick paints in certain areas. You'll get some combinations, some unexpected things that work sometimes. Alright, I had to move back into the shade a little bit. I was getting blasted by that sun. My viewpoint's a little different now, but that's okay. I have the composition down on the panel that I want to follow, and I still have the scene right out in front of me, just from a different viewpoint, so I can get the colors and just use the earlier view, the composition I have for the shapes. So now I'll go ahead and mix up some colors for the foreground. I want to get a real rich green for the moss on the rocks. I want to get a real deep, warm shadow and a real deep, cool shadow. Just kind of vary that. A little bit of yellow-green for the moss on that tree, and a kind of grayed down burnt sienna for the shadow side of that large tree. And then some warm greens, warm rich greens with maybe a little bit of phthalo blue added so that it really glows for the foreground water. And I'll leave some of that underpainting, the warm underpainting, showing through that to suggest the rocks. And I may or may not do the white of the rapids at this point. I may just leave the scrubbed out white of the panel for that now. When I look at the rapids here in person, they have a brilliant yellow where the sun is directly hitting them. It's pretty close to the scrubbed out panel. The shadow side of the rapids is kind of a light lavender. And there's a nice warm green that's leading up to yellowish green, really high value that's leading up to the lightest part of the rapids. So I'll just try to get those color notes down enough that I can finish it in the studio and stay true to the colors that I'm seeing in the scene. Okay, taking a step back, I do like what I'm seeing. It's got a strong abstract pattern. The big shapes in the front, the little shapes in the back are working for me when I look at it. I think the trees in the background there, the vertical tree and the fallen log are too much contrast. I need to lighten those a little bit to make them kind of recede. And this blue here in the shadow is too vibrant. I need to gray it down. Darken it down with a little bit of grayish black without making it too dark. See, I'm playing with Mark D'Alessio's method of using a different brush for a different value, for a different hue. So I've got a handful of brushes here, and I'm trying not to worry too much about the hue, more about the value. So if I have a brush with a light value on it, then I can use that brush and vary the hue a bit. But if I want to put down a really clean stroke of color, one of the colors I've mixed up, like this electric blue, then I want to get a fresh, clean brush and use that to drop it down.
Deadbeat, low fire, rain clouds and nightmares and twinkling star. Hell, no one not coming back. Hell, no one not coming past is gone and the future's gone. God give me freedom.
Alright, now I'm going to mix up a little bit of white just for the color of the rapids. I do want to drop that in. And then I think I'll be done. I want to clean my palette first so that when I mix the white, it's a real nice, pretty pure white. Take pure titanium white and just a little bit of yellow ochre for the yellow highlighted rapids, and then I'll take pure titanium white and just a hint of alizarin crimson, maybe a touch of that blue I mixed up earlier as well for the shadow side.
Rain clouds and nightmares and twinkling star. Hell no, I'm not coming back. Hell no, I'm not coming back. The past is gone and the future's unknown. God give me freedom or nothing at all. 'Cause hell no, I'm not coming back. Hell no, I'm not coming back.
Well, I got finished. The light really changed more than I expected. It swung around to be on me faster than I thought, but that's okay. And the light on the scene really changed, so it made it kind of a challenge, but I had fun. I'm really liking that Mark Delisio method of using separate brushes for different values. That does seem to help and speed things up. I'm gonna keep trying that. Let me show you the painting.
That's how it came out. I like the color harmony. I think it's pretty true to the scene that was here when I arrived, when I started. It's quite a bit different than the color harmony I'm seeing now, so I had to work from memory and from my reference photo quite a bit to make it read close to what I remember. I like how this reads as receding into the background, and it's pretty indistinct, it's pretty rough, abstract, that's what I was after. And then the foreground, I think, jumps forward. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'll take it back to the studio and look at it again, touch it up just a bit. I like how I have quite a bit of the underpainting showing through. It gives it a vibrancy that I think is interesting. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to support the channel, please make a comment below, share it with a friend. I just appreciate you joining me on these videos, and I'll see you in the next one. If you'd like to support the channel, please visit my website. I sell these little plein air pieces at a reasonable price because I consider them practice. It really makes me happy when someone likes my art enough that they want to hang it in their home. You can also sign up for my newsletter and stay up to date on my new work and shows and get a discount on original art and prints.
Deadbeat, bonfire, rain clouds and nightmares and twinkling stars.